Alright, treacle, today you find me heading down the motorway to South Essex.
Get out of my pub.
Good morning, good morning. Today you find me 30 miles to the east of London in South Essex.
Chicken boner, lamb boner, prawn boner, mushroom rice, bag of chips, keema naan and 9 poppadom.
I'm going to do a 15-mile run in a place called Benfleet. It's Sunday the 19th of January 2025 and I'm running the Benfleet 15, organised by Benfleet Running Club. It's 15 miles, 24k, with nearly 800 feet, that's 250 metres of ascent. And it's described as a challenging multi-terrain run, including parts of the 2012 Olympic mountain bike course. So the original mountain bike course that they chose wasn't gnarly enough, so they offered them this one because of its natural amphitheatre. Just look at this. What you can see here is South Essex looking across to Canvey Island, and that's where we're going. Yeah, back in the 1890s, the guy who founded the Salvation Army bought this land so that the poor and underprivileged people of London could come out here to the relative clean air compared to Victorian Britain, and in return for a day's work they would get board and lodging. And it's still Salvation Army farm up at Hadleigh Farm. It still does that today. Not the board and lodging bit, but giving opportunities to underprivileged kids. So whilst the ascent is only about 800 feet, 250 metres, it all comes in the first and last few miles, so most of the run is actually quite flat. So that bit was really quite marshy. A lot of this land is reclaimed from the sea. It's on the intertidal zones, but we'll look more at that when we actually run back on the sea wall. So it's called the Benfleet 15, but we started in Hadleigh and we're running towards Leigh-on-Sea. This area all comes under Castle Point, and that's Benfleet and Thundersley and Hadleigh and a couple of other bits. And the reason it's called Castle Point is just up there on the top of the hill. People have been living in this part of the world since Roman times and before. And Benfleet, the name, actually comes from Anglo-Saxon words meaning tree stream, on account of the fact that there were trees, but also it was very marshy, I think. Up here what you see is Hadleigh Castle. I must give a huge shout out to Pitsy runners. I have no connection with Pitsy runners, except I've met him a couple of times on runs, like the Testrat 10 and the Muntjac 15. And Beth from Pitsy knew that I was hoping for a ticket for this sold out event, and when her friend Ray said he couldn't take part, she put us all in touch, and here I am. Thanks. So had it not been for Beth and Ray and Kieran, who brought the number for me to collect this morning, I wouldn't be doing this, so thank you to Pitsy. So I mentioned mud and silt and intertidal zones, and if you think about places like Morecambe Bay in the northwest, that brings shellfish. And we're just now coming into Leigh-on-Sea, Leigh-on-Sea is famous for many things, one of which is cockles. And I'm hoping we get a sight of the famous Leigh-on-Sea cockle sheds. Thanks, marshals. Thank you, fella. Thank you, mate. So there, they used to harvest loads of cockles, whelks and eels around here. Cockles was the big one. And there were places where the fishermen would get the cockles and they'd all be boiled and shelled here and then shipped into London for all the people to eat there. And a good, easy, available source of protein, I guess. And the cockle sheds were typified by these huge piles of cockle shells outside each one. Over on my left there is an island called Two Tree Island. You can see this bit in the middle between us will be flooding at high tide. And it was reclaimed, Two Tree Island was reclaimed from the mud back in the 1800s and again used primarily for farming. It was called Two Tree Island because it had two massive elm trees on it, which unfortunately were brought down in storms in the 1960s. 5 miles, third of the way. What we're running on here is a sea wall, so you can see that side, this wall in the middle, and then this would have been the floodable area. That was all reclaimed land that could be used for agriculture. The great experts at reclaiming land from the sea were the Dutch, with all the work they did draining the polders and all of that, and their knowledge of creating dikes and sluices and managing the water flow was invaluable. And back in probably the 1800s, I think, or that may have been even earlier, I'll look it up, teams of Dutch engineers came to the UK and helped reclaim land up in the Norfolk, in the Fens and in Suffolk and down here in Essex. Across there is Canvey Island, and it wasn't actually an island, it was a group of separate little islands and silt and mud, and they built a wall round it all, those Dutch engineers, to try and make it into one entity. And it worked very well, and a lot of people lived there. And then in 1953 there was a very bad storm up in Scotland which came sweeping down the east coast in January 53, and huge winds whipping up the tide, and so massive tidal surge as well. Unfortunately, those winds brought down all the telegraph poles, which meant that nobody was able to warn this part of the country that there was a hideous storm and tidal surge coming. And about 300 people died that day, of which 58 were on Canvey. The huge surge came up this inlet, breached the sea wall and completely flooded it. And those 58 people, they either drowned in their beds or some even died of cold, clinging to their rooftops waiting to be rescued. So after that they built a much bigger, stronger seawall and embankment, which is in place now, and there's a complete evacuation system and sirens and all that would go off if such a thing ever happened again. And that's a flood defence barrier. You see the shutters drop down if they need to stop the water going in. There you go, thank you. You can really see the mud by that flood barrier. helps you understand the problems of trying to reclaim this kind of land. So this section is now a couple of miles into Canvey and then a couple of miles back. So we're running by the seawall, and here's all the runners coming back. And that looks like a spillway to allow too much water to come down here rather than do it in a controllable way. We're at the turnaround point, and these are the sluices, the way that they can release water into the channels to try and manage the amount of drainage going on. Because of its closeness to London, and whilst you may not notice it today, the clean, fresh sea air, Canvey has always been very popular with people from London. After the war, lots of people moved out to live here, and in the 1920s and 30s actually it was a really important tourist resort. Quite a lot of big hotels built here for the fresh sea air, but also it was people would come here to convalesce. So back in the old days where people had tuberculosis or consumption, it would be very common for them to be wheeled out on their beds to the end of a pier to breathe in that fresh ozone-filled air. In fact, in the 20s and 30s, one of the biggest hotels was Hotel Ozonia. Who knew? 12 miles. Legs are really quite tired now. Whatever enthusiasm I had for maybe running up or trying to run up the final hills, I can't see it really happening. Well, not all of it anyway, so here we go. One of Benfleet's claims to fame is the Battle of Benfleet. Not as you might expect, Napoleonic or something like that, but back in the 900s, the Vikings had a stronghold here because it's nice and close to Scandinavia. The Vikings were defeated by King Alfred's men here in Benfleet, the Battle of Benfleet. So last 2 miles, 4k, you can see Benfleet Marina down there, and that's the route we did away to Canvey and then back again, coming back over that bridge. Now back onto this bit of marsh. It's really sticky, that mud. I'm guessing that's the port of Tilbury. It's a shame on a clear day you can see into Canary Wharf and London's financial district, but not today. What you're seeing here is not modern agriculture grubbing out beautiful environmental stuff. It's the opposite. This is re-establishing grasslands that were lost decades ago. So part of a big programme of re-establishing the environmental strength of this area. If you look really carefully, I'll try and zoom on it, you can see the hill they're going to make us walk up in a minute. Oh, go on then. Head down, come on Skippy. Thanks mate. Flipping heck. God, there's some burning going on in those quads. Oh.
You look the same as when you started.
You look colder, bless you, thank you. I've got water, thank you. Oh my good God. 3:01:45 it looks like. Average pace 12 minutes a mile, which is what I thought. 2,000 calories. Definitely need a burger on the way home. So there we are. Whoops, there we are. Benfleet 15 done. How was it? That was hard. I had to dig really deep for that one. I mean, to be fair, I've not trained for a 15 miler. As you'll remember, I did the two trail halves at the end of last year in October and November, but then I haven't done anything of that length since, so it was always going to be a bit of a big ask. If you've enjoyed it, do feel free to give it a like, give it a thumbs up, all the usual stuff. That helps YouTube share it with other runners, and by all means please come along with me on the next run that I do. So what's my next run? So my next feature race obviously is the Dartmoor 30k, 18 miles from Princetown up to Oakhampton, which is the third week I think of February. I've also signed up to do a 20-mile race in March, and then of course the Charm Bracelet Trail Marathon in April. In the meantime, enjoy your running and I will see you very soon. Ta-ra now.